The Unexplained Rundown is pleased to partner with tpublic.com and bring you some fun and fantastical apparel and accessories that are truly out of this world. If you're keen to support the show and see it grow, be sure to check out some of the cool designs in the merch store and grab yourself a bargain. Use the link in the description below.
Or concern you about the unknown and the unidentified flying object?
Oh, yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military, and they never were able to make me a concrete report on.
Do you have anything on the subject, sir?
No, I haven't had anything on the subject, and there's always things like that going on. The flying saucers, and we've had other things, you know.
For years, the world has seen reality distorted, facts manipulated, and truth hidden. But there's even more to the story than anyone has ever suspected. Because no one has been able to see the whole picture. Until now.
Friends, welcome back to another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. I'm your host, Grant Lavac, and if you found this channel intentionally, then like me, you were intrigued by the unexplained mysteries of this mortal coil of ours, and you crave to know what's real and what is not. We've got some friends here. Jimmy's here at 4 p.m. this afternoon, very early. Love your enthusiasm, my friend, to always jump on and tune in for the show. My good friend Bill Chalker is here. Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in, as always, my man. I appreciate you opining, as always. Zane is with us. Yes, I will start with a traditional acknowledgement of the Bledsoes. We acknowledge the Bledsoes and their contributions to the topic, orbs, past and present and emerging. We thank them for their leadership. Yes, Ryan Bledsoe's been going a bit nuts as of late. But appreciate everyone taking some time out of their morning, their evening, their graveyard shift, their day, whatever it is where you're joining. Brendan, great to see you, my friend. Thanks for tuning in. For those that don't know, Brendan has a podcast that he does, so be sure to check it out. You can find his information via his YouTube profile. And we also have Woo Riders DG. Hello from Northeast Florida, 5:34 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for getting up at the crack of dawn and tuning in. And Jimmy asked Bill, did you get the Penny Wong t-shirt? Always good to see some regulars in the chat. I always enjoy seeing the comments that you guys put in. So very, very engaging. So thank you all for joining. Bill, I will be getting to some of your content as we go through this evening. And as always, folks, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Like and share goes a long way, but 75% of folks that tune in aren't subscribers on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button. If you want to go above and beyond, like, share, subscribe, you can also look at some of the membership options on YouTube, and Patreon links are all in the show notes below. And you can catch us on Spotify if you're interested to listen to your podcast there. So what are we talking about this evening, folks? Well, I thought it would be appropriate to do an episode on Westall, because next month, the 6th of April of 2026, marks the 60th anniversary of the Westall flying saucer incident. And so I thought it appropriate to maybe provide a bit of a preview as to what is planned for commemorations next month. And for those of you that have kind of been living under a rock for the last 60 years, if you're that old, and you have no idea what the Westall incident is, well, rather than bore you with my documentary, The Westall Witnesses, that I did a few years ago, I thought it might be of value for our good friend Ross Coulthart to provide a high-level overview, because he was recently sat down with Chris Ramsey of the Area 52 podcast. Link is in the show notes below if you haven't checked out. So I thought it might be a good opportunity for Ross, who's done some great research on the Westall incident, along with Bill, Keith Basterfield, and Shane Ryan, who's kind of led the charge for many, many years now. And there are others that have done some research as well. But I thought Ross would be best positioned to give us a brief overview based on his recent interview with Chris Ramsey. So this is Ross's recent sit-down interview with Chris Ramsey over at Area 52.
Case in 66, which we're coming up to the anniversary of in April.
Wow, that's
April
right.
6.
Yeah.
And when I was writing my book in plain sight, I heard about this case in Melbourne. And there's a great Victorian UFO investigation group, mainly led by a guy called James Rigney, who, by the way, was instrumental in securing the release of the Wilson Davis document. That's
right.
Another story. But I approached James out of the blue, and I basically said, look, can I come down to Melbourne and talk to you? I'm really interested in the Wilson Davis document, but I'm also really interested in the Westall case. And he also told me about the Kelly Cahill case.
Oh, Kelly Cahill's case.
Another famous case. And so I spent a weekend with James going around looking at the Kelly Cahill site. And then the great thing was I got to meet a whole lot of the people who'd been present at Westall as little kids.
The students, wow.
And I remember thinking, these people aren't lying. This is real. And then the absolute clincher, the absolute gotcha moment for me was when Andrew Greenwood, who'd spoken previously to James Fox anonymously, he met me. He was the teacher, the science teacher, who had been on the quadrangle with these kids when, on the 6th of April, 1966, they looked up over the field and there were either 2 or 3 or maybe 1, nobody's quite sure, there are differing witness accounts, 1 to 3 objects hovering over the school playground. And there are 100+ kids looking up at this objects, and they are metallic
Discs.
elliptical discs.
Yeah.
And as these kids watch, one of the objects lands in an area of forest, which is a place where the kids knew really, really well. And the hilarious thing is, the kids knew that land better than the military, who came in their droves and secured the site shortly thereafter. But there's a whole lot of stories, some of which I think, frankly, don't make sense.
Sure.
There's some elaborate stories where some people claim that they touched the craft, and I'm not 100% sure about that. But I am in no doubt that a group of kids got close enough to see the craft from probably 5 meters away.
Yeah, this is not unlike, the Zimbabwe incident as well at the Ariel school.
It's very like
similar.
the Rua story.
Yeah.
But what I love about the Westall story, and it's coming up for the 60th anniversary, and I'm going to be there for it, hopefully, is the military and the intelligence
Air
community
Force presence. Yep.
Andrew Greenwood, the science teacher, speaks publicly to a local newspaper, a local a local suburban newspaper. And he says, I'm sure about what I saw, and there's the quotes of what he said in the newspaper are still available in the archives today. He gets, and this is why he agreed to talk to me, he gets a knock on his door late at night. He opens the door, and there's one man in Air Force uniform, Australian Air Force uniform, and there's another man in civilian clothes. And they basically threaten him. And he was angry about this, really angry. They threatened him that if he didn't shut up talking about what he'd seen, they would put around a story that he was an alcoholic and he would lose his job as a teacher. And that's why he didn't talk about it for most of the last 40, 50 years. And
was he an alcoholic? Did he drink? Not at all.
No. Well, he probably had a glass of wine at Christmas time.
Sure, yeah.
No, he wasn't an alcoholic. He was a really decent, honourable man.
Wow.
Sadly, he's passed away as well. But he, in I think the last 2 years of his life, he agreed to give a television interview to me, and he talked very candidly about what he saw. And he was adamant about what he saw being not a craft. He was very precise and very scientific. He said whatever it was some kind of metallic, coloured, elliptical-shaped object. He couldn't say that it was solid because he didn't touch it. He was very scientific and very careful, but very, very precise. And it was very interesting because I'd say there's probably, I don't know, a dozen corroborative witnesses that I've spoken to. And there's an Australian researcher who's done some phenomenal work, and he's spoken to over 160 witnesses. There are people who saw Americans on the scene, and this is really interesting. There was a base called the Royal Australian Air Force Base, Sale, about 3 or 4 hours drive north of Melbourne, and the Americans had been operating a secret U-2 spy plane flying over the Southern Oceans to monitor for radioactive plumes, radioactive residue from either Russian nuclear testing or somebody else. It might have been suspicions about South Africa. I doubt if it was at that time. But whoever it was,
satellite stuff, or like
whoever it was, the kids that I spoke to, now adults in their 60s, they described American Jeeps turning up. People wearing American uniforms turning up at the school. They described being threatened by men dressed in civilian clothes. The whole school assembly was told to shut up about it. There was a real attempt to clamp it down. But what I loved about these kids, they're still really cheeky today. They love talking about it now that they're in their 60s. And I'm so looking forward to seeing them in April, because for them, this was a life-defining moment.
Yeah.
All their lives, they have lived with this reality of what they've seen. And, you know, you've had groups like the Australian Skeptics gave me a Benck Fork Award because I was the journalist that said that, you know, I gave this credibility. And for no good reason at all, absolutely no scientific basis to their assertions. They just sweepingly dismissed all of the evidence given by these multiple witnesses, first-hand witnesses, and just said it's just a bunch of school kids getting excited and confabulating, and they were excited about the Frederick Valentich case, and it's all nonsense.
Yeah, still to this day as adults.
And if you hear the passion from those people, there is no doubt in my mind that they are telling the truth and that they saw something anomalous. And the kicker for me was Andrew Greenwood having the courage before he passed to speak publicly about the fact that he had been threatened by somebody from what he believed was either military or an intelligence agency.
American.
Why? Well, we don't know.
I see.
We don't know.
Right.
Why shut down a legitimate public inquiry into what was obviously anomalous phenomena? Why?
And there you go. So Ross absolutely covers it so incredibly well there. I mean, this is why I find Westall so incredibly fascinating. 60 years on, we're no closer to the truth of what happened on that morning of the 6th of April, 1966. There have certainly been many, many witnesses that have come forward over the years. And to, again, Shane Ryan's credit, he has been largely responsible for getting them to come forward. And we're so fortunate that both James Fox, James McDonald, first off, the Dandenong Journal, then James McDonald, then James Fox, and obviously Ross were very, very fortunate, and it was very valuable for them to be able to bring Andrew Greenwood forward and expound on his testimony above and beyond what he recollected in his interview for the Dandenong Journal a week after the event. I think it was on the would have been on the 12th or 14th, something like that, of April 1966. So less than about a week after it happened. So for those of you that are new to Westall, I thought Ross really summed it up quite well there. I mean, that's only scratching the surface as well. But next month marks the 60th anniversary of the Westall flying saucer incident. And there are a number of events that have been scheduled to commemorate the occasion, starting with, if I just pull into view here, I'll bring back my trusty slide deck. This is just a snapshot of the signage at the Grange Reserve down in Clayton South. And there is an event that is scheduled for next month where you will have an opportunity to meet a number of the Westall witnesses. And for those of you that have never been to the Grange Reserve, I'm fortunate enough that I now live in Melbourne, and I've been to the Grange on a number of occasions. I've had an opportunity to meet a number of the witnesses at the annual reunion event. But if you've never been to the Grange before, if you won't have an opportunity to get along to the upcoming commemorative event for the 60th anniversary. Let me play you very, very briefly just a bit of a snapshot from the documentary that I did a few years back called The Westall Witnesses, and the link's in the description below if you're keen to check it out. This will kind of give you a sense as to what you can expect in terms of the surrounds at the Grange Reserve. Well, I'm here on scene at the Grange, where on the 6th of April 1966, hundreds of school children at the Westall High School reported seeing an anomalous object or objects, what they described as flying saucer in shape, hovering above and flying across their school and landing in an area called the Grange, which is littered with these pine trees, very, very tall pine trees, and they've commemorated the incident in the background there with a children's playground resembling that of a UFO. Designed in close collaboration with the Kingston City Council and Allplay, the classic flying saucer playground installation at the Grange is equipped with climbers, slides, and flight controls that would leave even Doc Brown in awe. As you would expect with all playgrounds, the Grange comes with amenities for carers and toilets for playground users in need of relief. This one at the Grange offers a rather unique and educational experience for those who aren't au fait with their space race history.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And for all the die-hard UFO fans out there, the rear of the toilets even pay homage to the indistinguishable sport model made famous by none other than Bob Lazar. Or should I say, Bog Lazar. Signage at the Grange offers an insight into the events of that day, along with a history of the site. As people started to arrive and mingle, I made my way over to the group to introduce myself and pick the brains of the primary witnesses in attendance. So that is just a lightning quick clip from the Westall Witnesses, the documentary I did a few years ago, where I took my trusty iPhone with me to a reunion event that the Westall Witnesses have on an annual basis. Obviously, throughout the COVID, they couldn't do it. So 2023, I was down there in April, and it was a small gathering, but I had no intentions of making a documentary, just had my phone with me. And before I knew it, a number of them were very willing to answer questions and go on camera. And I got so much footage that I thought, geez, it would be good to put this into a long form documentary. And that's exactly what I did. So if you haven't seen the Westall Witnesses, feel free to check it out if it's of interest. One of the nice things about the Grange is that only a few minutes from that area that you just saw in the clip is the alleged landing site of the Westall flying saucer, or the objects between, again, 1 and 3. It's ambiguous as how many there were, but you can, within a few minutes walk from where I just showed in that clip, you can make your way down to a narrow wooded path to the alleged landing site of the Grange. So again, for the benefit of those of you that maybe don't have an opportunity to get to the upcoming Westall event, or if you live interstate or internationally, this kind of gives you a sense as to really how close the alleged landing site is from that main reserve area at the Grange. Prepared to make our way to the alleged landing site, I was struck with how loud light aircraft could be heard from overhead. As we set off on our journey, I'll be honest, my heart began beating against the walls of my ribcage, and there was a flutter of butterflies in my stomach. I was both a little anxious and excited, like a young boy waking up at 5 a.m. on Christmas Day. Not only was this the first time I'd ever spoken with witnesses of a UAP sighting firsthand, this was the very first time I was visiting an alleged UAP landing site, the Westall Flying Saucer landing site. And I couldn't help but wonder what the skies would have looked like from below on that day as an anomalous object passed overhead and descended to the southeast corner of the Grange, now only minutes away.
I think stories will change over time, but to have that many witnesses, surely they'd have to believe something.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And nothing's grown here since? No. Wow, so that is weird.
And how often would you have cross country down this way?
Oh, once probably a couple of months or so.
Okay.
Yeah, all the time. So this is the area.
Right.
But when Terry came in, when Terry ran in, she came in from that direction.
Yep. Oh, that's the golf course there, is it? Is that the golf?
Yeah, that's the golf course.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Spring Valley Golf Course.
So nothing is. So what was here before?
Bush.
And nothing's grown here since.
No, mate. That's it.
Surely you would think that would be evidence.
And so that on the left there, that's Joy Clark. She was 12 and a half on the day of the Westall incident, and she was serving as our tour guide, taking us down to the alleged landing site that day. So that's the really great thing about the these annual reunion events that the Westall Witnesses put on, is it's an opportunity for members of the general public to get down there, those that may be new to the Westall incident, those that are well versed, go on down, have an opportunity to talk with some of the witnesses, meet new people, network with those that have a similar interest with you. For me, it's a great opportunity to see not only a number of the witnesses that I've stayed in contact with and I engaged over time, but also an opportunity to catch up with some fellow researchers and friends that live in Melbourne as well as interstate. So reason why I show you that, again, is not to kind of say, go and watch the Westall Witnesses, even though feel free if you wish, but to give you an opportunity to see what the Grange area looks like, because next month, if I put this back into view for you, so you have an opportunity to meet the Westall Witnesses on Saturday, the 4th of April at 12 p.m., which coincidentally, I found out today, Friday, the 3rd of April in the US, so it'll be Saturday, the 4th of April for us Aussies, the new Bob Lazar, S4, the Bob Lazar story gets released on Amazon. So you can get double Yahtzee and get bang for your buck on that day and meet Westall Witnesses and then watch the old Bob Lazar documentary later in the day. That's what I'll be doing, that's for sure. So for those of you that are in Melbourne, and I know there's a couple interstate travelers that will be making their way down for the Westall opportunity to meet the Westall Witnesses, I will be there at the Grange, so I look forward to seeing some familiar faces. But that's not the only event that will be happening in April to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Westall flying saucer incident, because, and I'll pull up the trusty web browser here. I'll show you that. Here it is. So the city of Kingston is putting on a special event, a little bit small on the screen, but there is a Westall UFO 60 years on event, and that's basically the reason why I titled this episode Westall 60 Years On, because it's comparable with the title of the event that is going to be put on by the city of Kingston. Kingston Libraries is putting on an event on the 12th of April. Westall Library invites the community to mark the 60th anniversary of the Westall UFO sighting, one of Australia's most fascinating and enduring local mysteries. Now, I've added a link in the description below to the actual Kingston Library's website. So if you're interested to read up on the event, I believe there are a number of additional spaces that were made available. Because it's a relatively small library, I believe there are only 70 spots, 70 seats available, but I believe they've extended that due to the overwhelming interest, because those 70 seats pretty much were booked up straight away. Both the Meet the Westall Witnesses event the week prior and this Westall UFO 60 Years On event, they're both free to attend. However, this one that's being put on by the Westall Libraries, or Kingston Libraries, I should say, at Westall Library, requires you to book. So if you want to book, just book now and you can reserve your seat. The one thing that's unfortunate is they use this image to promote the event. That's actually a fake image. That is not, there is no photographic evidence that has ever seen the light of day that's never been released in the public domain of what was seen at Westall on the 6th of April, 1966. For some reason, this has been pushed out there time and time again as a photo of the Westall UFO. It's not, it's CGI generated, and Westall happened at around about 10:15, 10:20 in the morning. And what can you see in the background? You can see lights. So this is a hoax, a fake photograph that unfortunately keeps getting pushed and used whenever something, not all the time, but usually in the media, to talk about Westall. So just to kind of read it for you folks, Westall UFO 60 years on, Sunday the 12th of April from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. It is around, obviously, the reason why they've done it on the 12th of April, Easter was the week prior, so there's the Easter long weekend, which the Saturday the 4th Meet the Westall Witnesses event is around that Easter time, so understandably some folks will want to be with their families. But just to read it for those that like to listen to this as a podcast, Westall Library invites the community to mark the 60th anniversary of the Westall UFO sighting, one of Australia's most fascinating and enduring local mysteries. On 6th of April 1966, dozens of students and teachers, a hell of a lot more than dozens, and teachers witnessed an unidentified flying object, an event that continued to spark curiosity and debate. The program features a panel discussion and interactive Q&A where witnesses and researchers will share first-hand experiences and answer audience questions, offering rare insights into what happened. Attendees will also hear from Shane Ryan, lead researcher of the Westall incident and principal researcher for the documentary Westall 66, a suburban UFO mystery. Shane will discuss his research, the documentary, and his forthcoming book, which I'm really, really interested to get my hands on as soon as it becomes available. I think Shane is well positioned to certainly put out a wonderful book on all of his research on Westall. So his forthcoming book, as well as related UFO sightings in Australia and abroad. A recording studio oral history demonstration will showcase, preserve stories, and guide community members on recording their own histories. This event offers a unique opportunity to explore a moment that placed Westall on the world map. Come along and enjoy a fascinating afternoon. So I will be at both events. I know that there'll be a number of folks in the live chat that will be there. Bill Chalker is planning to get along. Jimmy, James Rigney, Shane Ryan will be there. Fingers crossed, I believe Ross is planning to be there and possibly doing some coverage for News Nation for I think Reality Check. I haven't heard any confirmation on that, but that's what I've heard. And George Simpson, other researchers, there'll be a lot of folks obviously above and beyond the Westall witnesses. So I'm really just looking forward to getting along, having a vested interest in the Westall case and having done only a very small bit of research in comparison with what the likes of Bill, Keith, and Shane and Ross and others have done. I'm just really looking forward to getting down there and having a chat with friends, making some new friends, and obviously catching up with those like Shane and others. So do consider getting along. Again, I don't know how many additional spaces they've made available, but if you do want to get along, do consider coming down. It's bound to be a pretty cool event. So let's just open up for a few comments or questions that you've got. So I'll just say hi to a few folks. Great to see you, Bex. Thanks for joining. Steve is choosing to watch an AFL game. Yeah, I spoke to Steve and when attended the premiere of the man who saw them arrive, and he's a trusty AFL fan, so that doesn't surprise me. Short Order Cook, great to see you, my friend. Thank you for joining. We also have a few others that have joined as well. Love this docker, Grant. Thank you so much. Jack Lansford, appreciate your kind words there. Again, those of you that haven't seen the Westall Witnesses documentary I did a few years back, doesn't have the same production value as The Phenomenon or Westall 66 that Shane Ryan is in, but I poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. So I think it serves as a pretty decent companion piece to what some other great researchers have put out there. Mark, always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for tuning in. Jasmine is here as well. Always good to see you, dear. Thank you for joining. And who else do we have? We've got any? I think that's pretty much everyone's comments so far. So let's soldier on, and I'll try and maybe see if I can go back and share some of your other comments, because they might be a bit more suitable and appropriate for when we soldier on as we go through. So let me pull on up, come back to the slide deck, because not many of you may know this, but I was made aware of it. There is a brand new podcast that has been put out. And let me make sure I turn off Jasmine there so she doesn't get wondering why her comments left on the screen. A new podcast called Conspiracy Cabal. And my fellow Aussies, you may recognize the face on the right there. So this is a brand new podcast. The gentleman on the right is, make sure I've got his credentials right, Dr. Nick Coatsworth. So throughout the COVID era, many of us in Melbourne and Australia will know that he is an Australian infectious diseases expert. He was Australia's Deputy Chief Medical Officer during the COVID pandemic, when he regularly appeared in print and on radio and television to provide the public with information. So something I certainly wasn't expecting to see Nick Coatsworth doing a documentary on conspiracy theories, and their very first episode is on the mystery of Westall. Now, I've put a link in the show notes below, so certainly have a look at their first episode. I think they did a relatively good job, and it was actually Shane Ryan that made me aware of this. So kudos to Shane for sharing that information. But let me show you a brief clip from their first episode of Conspiracy Cabal, because it will dovetail nicely into where we're heading next in terms of talking about Westall. So this is from the first episode of Conspiracy Cabal, the mystery of Westall UFOs in Melbourne.
The official explanation for what people saw has come out that this was part of a sort of top secret US Australian high altitude atmospheric weather balloon, basically. And at that time, there were balloons up in the air under a project called Hibal, which is high altitude
balloon,
yeah, basically. And the National Archives of Australia, which is a great resource for anyone wanting to research interesting bits of Australian history and testing and experiments, and particularly some military things, it's such a great repository of files. It actually has a lot of files from the 60s about Project Hibal and another one called Ashcan. And they were upper atmospheric testing using high altitude balloons, looking for radiation up there to basically see what was going on with nuclear weapons testing by ourselves, because we were doing Australia, the big tests out at Maralinga in the desert in South Australia, but also from our Cold War enemies, wind patterns, how does that push radiation around our skies and things like that. And, they were going up. This is incredibly high. Like, these balloons were up at 100,000 feet and focusing on Mildura in northern Victoria, because as a place with an Antarctic winter vortex, and it's a westerly wind weather pattern, and it's super strong apparently in Mildura. So, okay, that's plausible.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the thing that worries me there is not that a balloon can't behave like that. I mean, I'm no aerodynamic expert, but we've all let go of a helium balloon on a windy day where and it will move in all sorts of different directions, and it'll move quickly. And these things probably would never have been seen before. I mean, if it's new tech, if it's some sort of collaboration between the US and the Australian Defence Forces or intelligence services, no one will have seen it before. So that kind of ticks the box. I suppose the altitude thing bothers me a little bit. I'd love to get someone who could tell us, if you stick a high altitude balloon up, what happens? Like a crow comes and pierces it, comes down, because this has to come down, right? This thing is moving around. It's large. It's within the field of view of the children and the teachers. One of them is actually said to drop down before moving off again. That's hard to reconcile with the balloon theory, even though I agree that it sounds like the most probable explanation for all this.
Yeah, what's curious for me in terms of explanation is the lack of any official Australian government explanation for this. There's never been an official account of what happened there. Now, Australian journalist and UAP truth seeker, Ross Coulthart. He's got his own podcast, which is focusing a lot on contemporary unidentified aerial phenomena and disclosures in the United States. It's pretty interesting. But he did a report in 2021 on the 7 Network Spotlight program that he believes that a now defunct part of Australia's Defence Department did hold a secret investigation into Westall and produce a report that's never seen the light of day. Now, if anyone out there has that report and wants to be a friend of the podcast, we'll definitely buy you lunch if you want to slip it.
You'll definitely be in the cabal if we get a hold of that report. That would be very interesting. And I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Rich. Like where there is a lack of information or, something that clearly was witnessed, I don't think anyone's making up the fact that a Jeep turned up or that there were people in uniform or they got told to keep quiet about it. Like this is, I don't think you can gaslight that away. That's pretty hard. So then the absence of something official really makes people sit there and go, well, what is going on? And, the most fascinating thing for me about this whole Westall 1966 incident is that there aren't more Australians who know about it. Everybody I talk to and say Westall 66, they sort of go, huh? And it would seem to me to be one of the most fascinating examples of, if not a UFO sighting, certainly what Australia was like back then in 1966.
So certainly some good commentary, I thought, from the two of them there. Obviously, I think they provided a pretty good basic summation of Project Hibal, high altitude balloon, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And they also alluded to towards the end there that, 60 years on, there still has not been any formal explanation or any documentary evidence provided by the Australian government at a federal, state, local level with the Australian Department of Defence as to what it was that several hundred witnesses saw in the sky above Westall High School on the 6th of April, 1966. And it wasn't just children. It was teachers. It was Paul Smith, a market gardener, 16 years of age, not even on the school property. Dee Sadike, a primary school student at another school about between 5 and 10 Ks away. And there are members of the public as well. So it just flummoxes me that after 60 years, we still don't have any official documentation or explanation that's been provided by the Australian government. And that's one of the reasons why that many of you will know that have followed my interest and research on the Westall case is that was the impetus for me to create a petition, submitting a petition to the House of Representatives, basically asking the House of Representatives, the Australian government, to install or establish an independent inquiry into the Westall incident. And this petition, I won't read through it. The link is in the description below. But basically, the petition asked the House to establish an independent inquiry to uncover the truth of the Westall incident, honouring the experiences of those present and affirming Australia's commitment to openness and transparency. Now, that secured 831 signatures, and it was closed on the 21st of September of last year. Now, that petition has been presented and is awaiting a response from the minister responsible for the matters raised in the petition. Now, who is that individual? Well, you would guess correctly that it is the Minister for Defence, the Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles. And 90 days after the petition has closed, ministers are asked to respond to the petitioner or to the petitions committee, providing a written response. Do you think they've received a response? If you said no, you would be absolutely correct. And that is incredibly frustrating for me and 831 other individuals that signed signatories, that signed that petition, because we want to know, why was there a rapid military response on the day of the incident? Why was there confiscation of evidence? Why was there witness intimidation? Why was an area cordoned off and shut down for members of the public to access? Why was this Department of Supply report never released to the public? Why has that never seen the light of day? That's what I covered in the petition. And pretty disappointing but not unexpected from the Minister for Defence, Richard Marles, that he hasn't yet responded to that petition. So I fired off an email to Richard Marles, again, not really expecting to get a response, but really just, this was only a few days ago because I had inquired a number of times with the petitions committee asking had they received a response. And they were basically saying, if we get a response, we'll post it, it'll be made public online. So I'll read this out to you again. This is for the benefit of those primarily that like to listen to this on Spotify. Dear the Honourable Richard Marles, Member of Parliament, I'm writing to you regarding House of Representatives Petition EN7396, request for independent inquiry into the Westall incident, which was recently presented to the House. As Minister for Defence, this matter falls directly within your portfolio, specifically concerning the historical involvement of the RAAF, Royal Australian Air Force, and the Department of Supply, as well as current departmental policies regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP. The petition highlights several critical issues that remain unresolved nearly 60 years after the events of 6 April 1966, being a lack of official explanation, despite documented risks to persons and flight safety at the time. No official source or identity for the object or objects has been provided. 2, allegations of interference, long-standing reports of government intervention, including the confiscation of evidence and witness intimidation by military personnel, require transparent scrutiny. And 3, policy review. The RAAF's 1996 decision to cease investigating UAP warrants a formal review to align with modern transparency standards. Understanding Order 209 of the House of Representatives, it is expected that the relevant minister provides a response to a petition within 90 days of its presentation. I note that this petition is currently listed as presented and is awaiting your formal response. On behalf of the 831 signatories, I'm writing to formally seek transparency and accountability regarding the significant moment in our national history. We request an update as to when the Petitions Committee and the public can expect your formal response to this request for an independent inquiry. Thank you for your time and your attention to this matter of public interest. Signed by myself. So I don't anticipate that I'm going to get a reply, but I'm going to keep following up to see if I can get a response. And I think there may be interest from the media if there is a lack of response from the Minister for Defence. So that kind of was an interesting episode that was covered off on by those two gentlemen, their very first episode of Conspiracy Cabal. So do feel free to check it out if you want to listen to it in its entirety. Again, I'm always supportive of any conversation that's had basically on the Westall case, because I do think it is one of the most significant cases, not in our own backyard, our nation's history, but internationally. It is one of the most renowned, unresolved cold cases of our generation. And to Nick Coatesworth's point there, I think not a lot of people still know about it. So hopefully 60th anniversary events like next month, Shane's book, other media coverage and documentaries that are done on it, I think can just increase awareness. And who knows, maybe propel other witnesses to come forward, new information to come to light. We can better to try and fail rather than fail because we never tried. So that leads us into, I'll go back to the trusty slide deck. So why do I also want to talk about Westall this evening? Well, when was it? Earlier this month, the start of the month, I had an opportunity to pay a visit to the Victorian Archive Centre in Melbourne, where the Victorian branch of the National Archives is located, because there are a number of records that have never seen the light of day pertaining to Project Hibal. And there are a number of records from the Bureau of Meteorology, for the Royal Australian Air Force, the Department of Supply, that have not yet been formally examined, that may reveal some breadcrumbs on what may have happened or may not have happened on the 6th of April, 1966. So I paid a visit down to the National Archives of Australia at the Victorian Archive Centre because I was chasing, and I'll pull this back on screen so you can see it. The National Archives of Australia's website. I'll just show you as an example. If I type in Hibal, there are a number of results. There are 18 results that come up. Now, a lot of these records are open, meaning they're available for public review. You can go to the National Archives in Canberra and have a look at those records. Many of these records, or some of them, have been digitized, so you can actually click on the paper link, and it will just show you the digital records that someone has purchased, and they're available for public view. A lot of these records are obviously in Canberra, but there are some that are located in Melbourne. And there's also, I believe, one record that is located in Sydney that is not yet examined. So the reason why I show you this, well, there was one record. I'm going to show you which one it was. It's this one. So upper atmosphere sampling, Hibal Mildura. Oops, come back. 1966 to 1969. Now, this was not yet examined as of last month. So I noted, actually a few months ago, not last month, a few months back, I requested access to those records because the preceding records, which covered the Westall period, 64 to 66, were already available, and I think had been secured for release by Keith Basterfield. But these records that covered the period 1966 to 69 had not been yet examined and hadn't been available for the general public to see. And there is actually part 6, which is not. I've requested access to these records, and that may have hopefully revealed some breadcrumbs for Bill Chalker, which we can talk about in just a moment. Whilst it won't necessarily, I think, reveal anything on Hibal involvement in Westall because of the date range. I'm just personally interested to have a look at records pertaining to Hibal that have not yet been publicly released. Now, I personally don't invest a lot of stock in the Hibal hypothesis, but as a researcher, I can't just discount it. I can't just dismiss it. I want to see evidence that completely removes Hibal from the table, even if I don't believe that it may be the most probable explanation for Westall. Nonetheless, I want to see evidence, documentary evidence, that we can then look at and say definitively that Hibal was not responsible for the Westall case, or Hibal was responsible for what was seen above Westall. I'm not going to discount something without seeing that's something that's of interest to me without seeing any documentary evidence. So I went to the National Archives Victorian branch and I had a look at this record, hoping that it would shed some light on maybe potential Hibal involvement in Westall. Now, why was I interested to have a look at that particular record? Well, if I pull up again the trusty slide deck, and for those of you that don't know what a Hibal looks like, let me pull it into view for you. This is an example. This is from the records that are available, historical records that are available. This is an example of what a Hibal high-altitude balloon looked like on launch. Inflation of the balloon with helium, massive in height, and this is it on ascent. You can see it's got a payload attached at the bottom. That section with the red, that's the parachute, and above that is the actual high-altitude balloon. What they would use, they would have a cut down. They would use radio frequencies to set off kind of like squib detonators. And when they wanted to release the payload and have it safely parachute its way back to Earth, there would be detonators that would separate the balloon, separate the payload with its parachute from the balloon. Now, this is just, I'm kind of lightning quick going through it for you, those of you that don't know what Hibal is, but this is an example of what a high altitude balloon, part of Project Hibal or Hibal, looked like when they were launched from Mildura in the northwest of Victoria. So I show you that because, and this is where I want to come to, obviously, Bill Chalker, because Bill has done a significant amount of research on the Westall case over the years. And if I show you, as has Keith Basterfield, so this is one of, I believe, several articles that Bill has done on Westall. This is quite a while back. This is over 10 years, obviously. This is, I only put this one as in the link, a link to this one in the show notes below, Bill. I know that, obviously there's another article that you did, and you had some comments pertaining actually to an addendum. So I'll read those in just a moment. But Bill has done, I think, a really good article at this point in time using the information that was available to him in 2014 about the Westall case, and referencing some obviously articles of the day and in the years thereafter, hypothesis that Keith Basterfield had put forward. So I won't read this article from top to bottom because it's quite lengthy. I would encourage you to have a look at it. It's a very, very interesting article, and I think Bill does a really good job of referencing a lot of great source material, documentation in terms of what's been released through the National Archives over the years, and some articles as well. But I wanted to specifically reference an addendum to that, and I'll come to the addendum, Bill's comments on that in just a moment. But I wanted to show you an article that researcher Keith Basterfield put out in 2017, a dissenting view on Westall. So in summary, Keith Basterfield, a wonderful researcher like Bill, I have a ton of respect for them both. Keith put out a hypothesis, a working hypothesis, that, well, perhaps a high altitude balloon that was well and truly off course was the result of what was observed in the sky above Westall High School on the 6th of April, 1966, and came down to this densely wooded area known as the Grange. Now, again, I'm not going to read through this article. You can have a look at it at your leisure. But what Keith was able to find, so Keith's hypothesis was that, well, it was a Hibal balloon that was responsible for what witnesses saw. And so one of the counter arguments, I'll just read this portion, one of the counter arguments put forward concerning this hypothesis was that no documentary evidence could be produced to show that a very specific flight, Flight 292, Hibal Flight 292, scheduled for launch on the 5th of April 1966 from Mildura, Victoria, had even gotten off the ground. So Keith had located a tentative schedule of launches for Hibal for April 1966, which showed 4 proposed flights on the 5th of April, the 13th of April, 19th, and the 21st. And this is from basically part 4 of the records that I just showed you in the National Archives. And if I pull up this document for you, I'll show it so it's a little bit easier on the eyes. Let me pull up this particular document. So this is what Keith Basterfield was able to secure for release through the National Archives many, many years ago. And it's a meaty document, 292 pages. But if I jump to page 51, actually page 50, but 51 including this cover page, well, this is the document that Keith Basterfield was referencing in that article. Project Hibal, Mildura, I desire to advise the completion of the March schedule. Project Hibal as follows. So each launching had its own designated flight number. The tentative schedule for April is as follows. April 5th, a day before the Westall incident, projected or forecast to reach an altitude of 90,000 feet. And on the 24th of March was Flight 291. So we obviously can conclude that Flight 292 was scheduled for the 5th of April, a day before the Westall incident. Now, another document that Keith was able to secure for release through, I believe it was US FOIA, was a document through the Atomic Energy Commission, I believe. I might be mistaken there. But if I go back to Keith Basterfield's blog, he references the United States Atomic Energy Commission, a report, Health and Safety Laboratory. And this is the report I'm referring to. Again, I'm going to show you what this looks like on screen. I'll read it from the top here. So basically, after finding that document through the National Archives of Australia, where Keith Basterfield was able to identify that Flight 292 was scheduled for launch on the 5th of April, 1966, He failed to locate any actual launch dates for April 1966, only what was tentatively scheduled. This caused Sydney-based researcher Bill Chalker to write on his DEBRIEFED blog dated 10th of August 2014, no documents have been found that even confirm that the scheduled 5th April 1966 launch took place. At the time of writing this article, Keith, when was it, 2017? Yesterday, while browsing the internet, I came across a document titled Health and Safety Laboratory Fallout Program Quarterly Summary Report dated January 1, 1968. So it must have already been released. Keith perhaps didn't secure it for release himself. Upon examining the several hundred-page document, I came across page 318, which provided a table showing that the April 1966 Hibal launches had occurred on the 5th, 14th, 19th, and 27th. Launches were often rescheduled from proposed dates due to adverse weather conditions. Hibal Flight 292 launched on the 5th April 1966 and reached a height of 27,000 meters, 88,600 feet. Less. What's that? About 1,400 feet less than the target altitude of 90,000. So, based on this information, Keith was able to state that the proposed Hibal Flight 292, scheduled for launch on the 5th of 1966 from Mildura, did launch successfully the day before the Westall incident. However, to date, there is no documentary evidence that has been located thus far that definitively tells us, well, where did Flight 292 go? What happened to it? Where did it land? And the interesting thing about that particular document, which Keith is referencing in his blog there of 2017, is that this is just to show you, and I've highlighted the key information, that stratospheric radionuclide concentrations, balloon samples collected during April 1966 from Mildura, flight day 5, so the 5th of April, altitude of 27 kilometers, 88,600 feet, and a different number that the Atomic Energy Commission assigned, and a HASL number 2272. I've tried to find records from the Office of Naval Research, the ONR, as well as NASA pertaining to this flight. Nothing has come up to date. And basically what it was up there in the stratosphere detecting gamma rays, all of these different elements. So again, we can reach the safe conclusion that Hibal Flight 292 did launch on the 5th of April 1966 from Mildura. Where it ended up, no one knows. And so that was one of my reasons for trying to get down to the National Archives to see if part 5 of this upper atmospheric sampling Hibal flights could reveal anything pertaining to that particular flight. So I took myself down to the National Archives, and let me now show you exactly what I came across. I want to show you. Actually, before I show you the actual document that I was able to examine in person at the National Archives, in order for Keith's hypothesis, and again, I respect Keith for putting it forward as a hypothesis, this is a crude creation. It's not to scale. It's not entirely accurate, but it kind of is to demonstrate what the flight path would have had to look like based on whether the altitude that was planned, the wind conditions would have to be a northwesterly at the surface, strong west to northwesterly aloft. This is the flight path that it would have had to take had it end up some 500 plus kilometers from Mildura at Clayton South at Westall High School. So we'll come back to this potential flight path in just a moment, because what I want to show you is researcher on X, TP Loft 2008, has done some wonderful research looking at what the Bureau of Meteorology was able to make available with respect to synoptic charts for the 5th and 6th of April 1966 and what the weather forecast looked like at that time. And so this is the official synoptic chart that was that is publicly available for the country for Australia on the 5th of April 1966. Now, I can't read synoptic charts, but TP Loft 2008 has done some incredible research on this, and the synoptic chart for the 6th of April 1966. And he was also able to source the actual weather forecast for Victoria. And this was as of 3 p.m. on the 5th of April 1966, giving a summary of what the weather forecast was looking like for Victoria. Now, TP Loft 2008 was also able to look at, via the publicly available documents that have been released through the National Archives, what the historical averages were in terms of wind speed, direction. There was a lot of work that was done by the Project Hibal team to kind of catalog what the wind direction, wind speed, what the temperatures were. So without actually having any documentary evidence for the actual wind speed, wind direction at surface level and at stratospheric levels, we're talking 88,000, 90,000 feet, we can only go off what data is available in these synoptic charts and this weather forecast. And if you take into consideration the data that is in these synoptic charts and weather forecast, it actually paints a very different picture as to what the projected flight path of Hibal Flight 292 would have looked like. And this is what it would have looked like, taking into consideration, again, the information that's available in those synoptic charts and the weather forecast. It would have a flight path of, again, this is a westerly to southwesterly, meaning it would have moved from west to east in a slightly northeasterly fashion, which you can see it would have come slightly, and landing inland in southern New South Wales. Now, again, this is speculative because we don't know what the actual wind direction was, the wind speed was for those altitudes of 80,000. We can only go off what is in that publicly available data. But this paints a different picture as to taking into consideration the historical averages that the Project Hibal team had put together, and obviously the data that TP Loft 2008 had put out, that paints quite a different picture as to where Hibal Flight 292 may have ended up. Quite different to obviously 500 and something kilometers southeast of Mildura and ending up in Westall. Again, speculative, but I think it's interesting to use that as frame of reference. So I wanted to see if I could get down to the National Archives and locate any documentary evidence that may have provided some additional breadcrumbs as to the fate of Flight 292. Even though I didn't have really invested a whole lot of stock in it being the most probable explanation, I still wanted to see if I could find some data to pull it off the table, to discount it. So I got down to the National Archives, and I didn't know going in how many documents I would be looking at, but this is the cover jacket, just so you can see what it looks like. This is the cover jacket. So rather than order digital copies, which would have cost a significant chunk because it's several hundred pages worth, I just took a photograph of my iPhone of every single page and read through it as best I could on the spot, and obviously wanted to take photos to be able to share this Part 5 record with other researchers and make it publicly available for others to look at on my website. Now, I'm not going to scroll through the entire document, and you can see there's a combination of typed letters. There is a lot of handwritten commentary as well. I'll give you an example, and it's actually in some cases quite hard to read. I mean, my handwriting reading skills aren't that great, so it took me a while to kind of read through and decipher what I was looking at. But what I came across in this document, if I jump to page 181, I was hoping that we would be able to get a sense as to what happened to Flight 292. Now, unfortunately, the earliest that this Part 5 series of records went to was the 5th of August, 1966. So there is unfortunately a gap between Part 4's documents, which really takes us to the end of March of 1966. So basically, April, May, June, and July records of Hibal flights are not accounted for. There is, well, I shouldn't say July. I said really April, May, and June, because this document shows us that Hibal flight 302, which is only 10 flights, was that 10 flights after 292, was scheduled. That took place on the 12th of July, and that was a successful flight. So unfortunately, my visit down to the National Archives didn't produce any breadcrumbs that would provide any information on the potential fate of Flight 292. There is records that are just missing, or they have, to Keith's point, may have possibly been destroyed. So unfortunately, a no cigar there. I wasn't able to shed any light on the potential fate of Flight 292. But what I did find in this series of documents, to my surprise, and I shared with Bill and some other researchers, was that there is quite an interesting document. Department of Supply, Ashcan Project Branch, American Project Branch, I should say. And it's a bit hard to see, so let me zoom on in. Manual of General Instruction and, Manual of General Information and Instructions for High Altitude Balloon Flights over the Woomera Prohibited Area. Now, where have we heard about Woomera? Well, we know Woomera has a long history in the UAP, UFO, UAS, unusual aerial sightings. For decades, there is a long history of Woomera having not just top secret, rocket testing. My uncle, Des Barnsley, was the program manager for the top secret RSAT, the first Australian satellite launched into orbit. And there were a lot of UFO sightings at Woomera. And my good friend, Rhys Dalton Morgan, has talked about his grandfather, Tom Dalton Morgan, who was basically he headed up Woomera. And there was a UFO sighting that he reported when the Black Knight rocket was launched. Now, unfortunately, there hasn't been any documentary evidence that's come to light thus far pertaining to Rhys's grandfather's sighting. And I know Bill has done some great research on that as well. But so Woomera is a very, very interesting place, not just for our national interests and supporting the work of the Yanks and the Brits, but there's a lot of top secret stuff that was kind of like Australia's Area 51 for many, many years. And so this document is really quite interesting because the index, whilst it really has nothing to do with Westall, I thought it was just an interesting fork in the road, because this document, which again, I don't believe had ever seen the light of day until I looked at it at the National Archives, talks about general pre-flight instructions, general flight instructions, the Woomera Prohibited Area general instructions, meteorological services, communications, radar tracking, balloon flight control system, scientific experiment instrumentation. And the last two were really last three were really interesting. Tracking aircraft, balloon cut down, so they would disconnect the payload with a parachute from the balloon, and balloon and gondola recovery. So for all intents and purposes, a crash retrieval team, which we know about anyway with Project Hibal, but those last three sections of the index, I, J, and K, I found quite interesting pertaining to tracking aircraft. So I'll just jump to those because, again, it's just quite an interesting read. Let's come to it. Where is it? I think it's here. There we go. Tracking aircraft. Again, this was information that I wasn't really aware of in this great detail, so I just thought it was quite interesting. It says it's a bit hard to read. A Tiger something sort of aircraft on charter to the balloon launching station will be used for observation of the balloon during the flight and at cut down and impact. The aircraft will normally be based at Mildura Airport, but during tracking operation will operate from any convenient and suitable airfield. The aircraft will operate from Woomera airfields in accordance with operational procedures agreed between the principal officer at Woomera Ranges and the Mildura station director at least 4 weeks prior to any balloon flight. The aircraft will be under the operational control of the principal officer, Woomera Ranges, during any flight within the Woomera prohibited area. Communication with ground stations will be maintained on either certain number of megahertz. The operating frequency will be nominated in the flight plan. The use of the tracking aircraft is the sole responsibility of the Mildura station director, and he must give prior approval to all flights. When in the Woomera prohibited area, the aircraft crew will be accommodated in quarters allocated at the time and for a predetermined tariff agreed between charter aircraft operator, the area administrator Woomera, and the Mildura station director. The aircraft crew must be security cleared to secret level, and for good reason, and will be required to observe, because they're in Woomera sensitive areas. We're required to observe all orders and instructions operative in the area at the time. Aircraft 100 octane fuel and other normal flight service facilities will be available, blah, blah, blah. And then it moves on to balloon cut down. A balloon flight will normally be terminated by transmitting a radio command. The command results in detonators firing and the consequent operation of the balloon and the gondola with its attached parachute. The balloon will descend in a free fall, and the terminal velocity of the gondola can be approximately 1,200 feet per minute. The estimated cut down time and position will be agreed between the principal officer, Woomera Ranges, the Woomera safety officer, the scientific team leader, and the Mildura station director at least 4 weeks prior to any flight. An emergency cut down command may be terminated at any time and could be required for any of the following reasons: public safety, including danger to life and or property, possible loss of gondola, unforeseen deterioration in local weather conditions. That's all important stuff to take into consideration with the Hibal hypothesis for Westall. Emergency cut down within the Woomera prohibited area shall be commanded only after agreement between the principal officer, Woomera Ranges, the scientific team leader, and the Mildura station director. Emergency cut down outside of the boundaries of the Woomera prohibited area shall be commanded only after agreement between the scientific team leader, the Department of Civil Aviation, and the Mildura station director. Any persons considered to be within the impact area resulting from an emergency cut down shall be advised where practicable and without delay of the probable impact position. It shall be the responsible of the Mildura station director to ensure that the persons concerned are so advised. Balloon slash gondola recovery. Within the Woomera prohibited area, the recovery of the gondola and the balloon, as required by the principal officer, Woomera Ranges, will normally be carried out by the Mildura station launching Mildura balloon launching station personnel. An officer of the Woomera Range Authority will accompany the Mildura recovery team on each operation. The Woomera recovery team may be used for specific flights. An officer from the Mildura station and or a member of the scientific team will accompany the recovery team on these occasions. The recovery team will normally be guided to the gondola by the tracking aircraft. Communication between the tracking aircraft and the recovery vehicle will be as follows on various frequencies. The Mildura recovery vehicle will be under the operational control of the principal officer, Woomera Range, during any operation within the Woomera prohibited area. And that is it. So again, a very, very interesting document. Now, taking into account everything that I've just read there, there's obviously a lot of safeguards that were in place that if Hibal Flight 292 was, and I'm not saying it is, but was what ended up at Westall, there are cut down procedures. It's being tracked on radar. There is an aircraft that is tracking its flight path. There's a recovery team. There are a number of agencies involved, and obviously that manual that I showed you, that was from a couple of years after 1966. I think it was probably might have been 1969. But you can imagine that there would have been comparable safety and security protocols in place if a errant high balloon, altitude balloon, was off course and there were some instances where a balloon did go off course and a cut down was unsuccessful. There was one instance where one of the Hibal balloons ended up crashing in the ocean, and they were unable to retrieve that balloon. So a lot of formalities, a lot of security protocols and procedures in place to ensure that there were safeguards. They could mitigate the risks inherent of a Hibal balloon going, gravely off course and presenting a clear and present risk to people, property, and safety of flight. So again, that document I just read doesn't necessarily have any bearing on the Westall case, but I thought it was an interesting document nonetheless, because one, I hadn't seen it before, and it pertained, specifically to Woomera, which is, for all of us that follow the UAP UFO topic, we know that Woomera is definitely a point of interest. Now, if you're interested to have a look at that document in its entirety, you're welcome to do so. I've actually posted it on my website, theunexplainedrundown.com, or just grantlavac.com. You'll come down to, ignore the guy at the top there, you'll come down to a section designated FOIA documents, and I'm in the process of uploading a few more, but I have posted the upper atmosphere sampling Hibal Mildura document, and you can just click view document, and it'll give you access to that several hundred-page record in its entirety. So if you're interested to have a look at it, feel free. Always interested to hear from other folks and get their thoughts. So the more people that have eyes on records that newly available for public consumption, you're certainly welcome to look at them and let me know your thoughts if you see anything that's interesting that maybe I have missed. So feel free to obviously take a look at that document. And again, for those of you that maybe are new to the Westall case, if you're interested, I always like to give myself a little bit of a shameless plug. The documentary I did a couple of years back, I've just revamped the thumbnail graphic. The Westall Witnesses link is in the description, the show notes below. So if you're interested to have a look at it, please do feel free to check it out. That's everything I wanted to cover off on Westall, folks. I know we've gone through a couple of different twists and turns there. So I do want to give an opportunity, a shout out to those that have provided some good comments. And I'll start with Bill. Bill's comments earlier on was that he noticed his link was up in the show notes below. His article, The Answer is Perhaps Not Blowing in the Wind. The only addendum Bill commented there was the Hibal launched from Mildura the day before, which we covered. Keith was able to show that through the records he gathered through the National Archives, plus the data gathered supported a normal flight, not a chaotic one down at Westall. So the article still pretty much stands. Keith Basterfield got the data out on that one. And that's where I think that those maps, those flight path visuals come in handy, because we can see what the flight path would have looked like. We know that it was a successful launch based on the analytics that came back on some of the measurements. We just don't know where it came down. We can only speculate based on available weather forecasts around that time. So interesting nonetheless. And so let's see if there are any other comments as we go through, because I know I've been yapping for quite some time there. So I always want to be able to. Bill goes on to say, for those who have Carol Lorenzon's 1966 book, Flying Saucers, The Startling Evidence of the Invasion from Outer Space. This is the first book published in October 1966 to mention Westall. I did not know that. So that is quite interesting. Even Bill goes on to say, it even named Andrew Greenwood, probably based on Vufor's Judy McGee's sharing of the Dandenong Journal with the British Flying Saucer Review back in 1966. And that Dandenong Journal article is still publicly available. It's actually the most requested article that the Dandenong Journal received. There are a lot of folks that like to be able to reproduce that article if they're going to be using it as supporting source material. So when I corresponded with the Dandenong Journal, who did the Dandenong Star, I believe it's now called, when they did an article on the Westall petition that I was trying to secure signatures for, they mentioned to me that their front page article from, I think it was might have been the 12th, 13th, or 14th of April 1966, is still their most requested paper. Bex, unfortunately, Bex, I need to bum a ride on the day of the Westall 60th. If anyone is heading out past the city, driving to the southeastern event and want to pick me up, I promise I'm not a boring passenger. So feel free, folks, to reach out to Bex if you're able to give her a ride along to the event. It's certainly bound to be an interesting day. So I'm looking forward to getting along to it. Bill adds comment, 1966, that Lorenzen book, page 273, a round grey object with a flat base and a bump on top was observed by science teacher Greenwood and students. Certainly that is what we have heard from many of the students time and time again over the years. See if there's any other comments there pertaining to, Bill goes on to say, Carol Lorenzen was head of the AARO group in the US Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. You're very welcome, Bill. Thanks for doing this and drawing attention to this remarkable affair. Always happy to include some information that's new and fresh, even though maybe directly doesn't reveal any new breadcrumbs about the case itself. Shorter to cook, I love the Westall story. I know many reference the South African school UFO incident. I always put the Westall incident in their chats. Yeah, a lot of common crossover between Westall and the Ariel case. Obviously, the difference being a lot of the students for the Ariel sighting reported that they actually saw beings and they had some form of communication. Nothing, I don't think, that's maybe may have been a few scattered reports from Westall, but I don't think those reports are particularly credible. So that is the key point of difference between Ariel and Westall, I believe, but so similar in so many other respects. Thanks, Jimmy. Kudos to you, Grant. Westall incident has so many unanswered questions, and it boggles my mind that no document has ever been found mentioning the incident. Yep, I'm totally with you there. So frustrating and perplexing that nothing has ever seen the light of day. Bex, the weather balloon is debunked by this meteorologist, meaning me. I know that you're a strong advocate for it not being Hibal, Bex, and again, I don't place a lot of probability that it being a Hibal balloon. Again, as a researcher, it's incumbent on me to stay neutral and follow the facts wherever they lead. And if I can find some documentary evidence that, again, pulls Westall from the table, great. Then we can focus, we can cross that off the list entirely, definitively, and we can focus on what other plausible explanations there may be. Was it some top secret technology that was being tested by the Yanks or by Australia? Or was it something completely exotic that conforms to the descriptions that the witnesses gave, that it was flying saucer shaped, it moved in ways that defied the laws of physics, and that they could not reconcile, and did not adhere to any of the known aircraft that we had at that time, and apparently still don't to this day. So what was responsible for what was seen above the sky in Westall on the 6th of April 1966? That's what we all want answers to. And that's why that petition is so important, because if the Department of Supply, there was a formal report that was a comprehensive report that was documented, the Australian public deserved to see it, and the witnesses deserve to have the truth, and for the government and the Department of Defense, the responsible agency, to be transparent about what it was, because they've lived with this for 60 years, and many of them have endured stigma, ridicule. They've been ostracized. They've been labeled the tinfoil hat. A lot of these witnesses had nothing to gain and really everything to lose by talking about it. And that's why I really applaud the efforts of Shane Ryan, Keith and Bill, trying to keep the Westall case in the public domain and in the public's interest, so that perhaps it encourages more witnesses to come forward years later. And there have been a number of witnesses. There was one witness that came forward as a result of the petition that reached out to me, and I put them on to Shane Ryan. They are in a neighboring school. This is if what they recollect is true, and I certainly believe that they saw something. In another school, I think Springvale, they reported seeing in communication with me, and then on to Shane, they reported seeing something that resembled a flying saucer. So, if more witnesses are able to come forward by us keeping Westall at the forefront, that's only a good thing. And who knows, it might just break the dam for us. Shorter to cook one. I know I've been yapping away here, so I'll get through the rest of your comments. Was the government investigation done by a contractor or private investigation, so it's not in the Australian government archives? Who could have done a private investigation back then? I don't know the full answer to that one. I'd probably defer to Bill and Ross, and Shane. I do know that from what I have heard, there was a gentleman that was tasked by the Department of Supply to report on the Westall incident. And that report, according to his wife, the gentleman has now since passed. It might have even been, his son. On this gentleman's passing, his wife put that report in the fireplace and burned it. Now, why would one be compelled to do that? She was apparently acting on instructions from her husband. If I die, please ensure this report is destroyed. Why would you feel the need to do that? But there must be, if that's, there must be another copy of the report that one would think would be in the possession of the Department of Supply, which is now defunct and over the years turned into, in part, the Defence Science and Technology Organization, now the Defence Science and Technology Group, and also the branch off of the industry Department of, I can't remember what it's called, Department of Industry and something like that. Jimmy did a FOIA request that the Australian National Archives has suggested that US National Archives may hold these Department of Supply documents on Westall. I've got a pending US FOIA request for Hibal records. So again, who knows what fruit that will bear. Again, better to try and fail rather than fail, because we never tried. Bex, the weather balloon theory based on the weather charts for 6th of April 1966 and the launch place in Laverton, it is impossible for a balloon to move against the wind and make a path over Westall School. So that's the weather balloon theory. That I believe that was put out early on. There was a snippet of an article that I believe, if you're referencing that, Bex, that is different to the Hibal hypothesis that Keith Basterfield has put forward. I know that there was it just a meteorological balloon that was launched out of Laverton. But to your point there, weather forecasts would pour cold water on that one. Goes on to say, this is not unusual for events witnessed around the world for a military presence to show up and take over. Shorter to cook one. All 891 of us want to reply. Thanks for following it, Grant. You're very welcome. I wish it was 891, 831. So not far off. But wouldn't it be funny if Westall report is actually in the Department of Education's vault? Yeah, and it's you make as much as it is maybe a little bit of sarcasm on the side there. I think it raises a good point, because in the document that I just showed you, in the records that I just showed you, there was a record from 1963 1963. That should not have been in the records that I was looking at, which was a date range 1966 to 1969. So is it possible that there is this Department of Supply report that inadvertently or intentionally made its way into another random set of records that was completely put in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or is it just buried somewhere in, in another agency's documents that have never seen the light of day? It's possible. Mistakes were certainly made in filing, and and I'm sure Bill can attest to this. But if you look through the several hundred pages of document that I looked at the National Archives, you'll come across a document that was dated 1963 or years prior to the range I was supposedly looking at, 66 to 69. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that Department of Supply, is it sitting in some other department's records somewhere? Who knows? It's interesting. Glad you got a little laugh out of that Bog Lazar joke there earlier, Jasmine. I had to throw that in. Bex, were they all launched from Mildura? No, they weren't. They were also in later years launched from Parkes, Griffith, even Townsville, I believe, was explored as a launching location. So no, they weren't all launched from Mildura, but Flight 292 was absolutely launched from Mildura, as you saw in that report. I believe George is here. George Simpson, how does a lighter than air device leave circular marks on the ground? It's a very good point. Very good point, George. There is a lot of other. If you try and reconcile Westall with Hibal, there are a lot of unanswered questions. How does that account for the movements that the witnesses saw? These erratic movements. How does it account for the humming sound that it made when it passed over, or it was in the vicinity of the power line at the southwestern corner of the school? How, if something did land, how could it leave that circular pattern? And some report scorch marks as well. You would not expect that from a lighter than air device. And certainly no one reported seeing a payload and a parachute. So we can make an assumption that if it was a Hibal, it would have been maybe the deflating Hibal balloon. A payload would make a significant dent into the Earth if it came down at speed, but you would expect a helium-filled balloon that would come down relatively slowly if it's deflating. How would a lighter than air device leave circular marks on the ground? So I think you raise a good point there. George goes on to say, Hibal is total BS. Again, I don't disagree with you, but again, I want to be able to see if documentary evidence can be located that completely pushes Westall out of the minds of the public as a plausible explanation, because I certainly think that it does not quite stack up. Let's have a look at Bex. Let's promise we never mention the weather balloon again, Grant. After you exhaust this line of inquiry, or we at an event to celebrate the ultimate debunking. That's what I'm trying to do, get it off the table so we no longer have to talk about it. But, again, I do have a ton of great respect for Keith for putting it forward as a hypothesis. There we go. I'm cutting out right now. I can't take this BS waste of time. There is good movie on TV. See you, folks. Good luck, Bill. Thanks for tuning in, George. Again, I'm only covering the research to try and pull it off the table, so we don't have to keep yapping on about it in future episodes. Let's have a look at, I think, all the it's a good point, Jimmy. Science teacher Mr. Greenwood surely wouldn't have confused a Hibal balloon with a UFO. I asked a number of the witnesses when I met them in 2020. What was it? 2023. They all said that they knew what a recreational balloon looked like, a hot air balloon. So you would think that whilst a Hibal balloon looks different in its texture, in its color scheme, it's semi-translucent. They would be able to identify if they knew what a hot air balloon looked like. You think they would be able to identify a deflating balloon. But Bill's point, I'm not as precise as Beck, but statistically low probability of coming down in Westall. But if it did, doubtful it would have gone back up, and pretty obviously it was a wayward deflated balloon. Very, very good point. George, the news. Whoops, let me show that again. The news showed circular ground marks left behind by a heavy object which pushed down the grass, and broken balloon, not even possible. It's a joke. Again, all good points that you include there, George. This review of Hibal is valuable, but it supports the idea that Hibal did not cause the Westall event. Clearly, it would be good to have more info, but presently that at least is where it's at. I couldn't agree with you more, Bill. I don't think there is anything wrong talking about Hibal as a hypothesis. That's all it is. It's a hypothesis. Again, I don't necessarily invest any stock personally that it was responsible for the Westall incident, but I can't take anything off the table without seeing documentary evidence, and that's what we're trying to do to take it off the table. Bill goes on to say, also, there was a secret PM secretary memo just weeks after Westall that gives no substance to the Westall Hibal theory. Rex, Grant, you're killing us. Can we let it go for now? You go check it out. We believe you when you say you exhaust it and can't find any evidence. George adds, common sense dismisses any mention of any balloon, period. Ask Colin Kelly if he saw a balloon. Be ready to duck if you do. I asked Paul Smith about, I actually asked all of them, I think a number of them, about, what do you think that's been put forward as a hypothesis that it was a high altitude balloon? And they all very quickly knock it back and says, no, it was not a balloon that we saw. Thank you, C. Kenzo. Appreciate your comments, my friend. Zeus JNR Hermes 2963. My ex was born on 5th of April. I was form captain 1976 1E. I hold the key. I won't say too much, but I would like to speak to Ross Coulthart in private. Feel free to reach out to him. I believe his email is muckraker@protonmail.com. I'm sure he would be very interested to hear from you, perhaps as would Shane Ryan. And you can just visit Ross on his account on X. If that email address is not correct, you'll be able to pull up the correct one. All right. I think we're up to date. There was a question for you, Jimmy. Did you submit a FOIA to the Department of Supply, National National Archives in the US? I'll leave it for Jimmy to respond to that one. Dit.55, great to see you. Thanks for joining. Howdy, Grants. Dorothy, good to see you, Dorothy from Woodwintery, Wisconsin in the USA. Nice to catch a live stream for once. Your shows are always intriguing. Thanks, Dorothy. I really appreciate you jumping in at 6:06 in the morning. It's 10 p.m. at the moment here in chilly Melbourne. So appreciate you tuning in. Aaron, great to see you as well. People and organizations should respect the science, and science teachers believe in the science. George, Paul Smith told me he saw this object pass through trees. He said if it had been a balloon, the branches would have torn it to shreds. It was no balloon. And you can actually see in the National Archives, some of the documents that have been released, what it actually looked like, these recovery teams retrieving a payload, with the balloon that had deployed. It's all torn and stuck in between trees, to your point there, George. So, if it was that, Hibal material, you would suspect would get easily shredded to bits if it was caught in a tree. Aussie Range, great to see you. Thanks for tuning in. And Bex is still looking for a ride to the Westall event. So thank you, as always, folks, for your comments. I always happy to share your comments, and pleased that you always engage in conversation. That's everything I wanted to cover off on Westall. So for those of you that want to stick around, please feel free, because now we segue and we talk about some news at home and abroad. So this is the section I call the rundown. So earlier this month, I had an opportunity to get down to the premiere of The Man Who Saw Them Arrive. Those that caught last month's live stream, I had an opportunity to interview the director, Zev Howley. I think he did a great job with the documentary. It's an interesting case. I'm still very much on the fence with what Colin Cameron saw, but it is an intriguing case, and unfortunately just shows you how much of an impact, a mental health impact, a sighting can have on someone. I often have wondered, is PTSD a symptom as a result of someone having a sighting, or is a sighting the symptom of someone having PTSD? So I'm very much still on the fence with the Colin Cameron case of 1968 Kew Boulevard, but I think Zev did a great job documenting what he did, and it certainly got people discussing the case after the premiere. And I believe Zev is taking it up to the Australian UFO Festival in August of this year for a screening. So it was good to get down there for the screening, the Melbourne Science Fiction Film Festival, and we had one of the Westall witnesses was there, Andrea, Colin Cameron's cousin, and Zev Howley, the director. So I enjoyed it. I didn't know much about the Colin Cameron case, so I was just interested to go and learn more about it myself, following on from the interview that I did with Zev, which if you're interested, you can check it out. So let's use that as a segue into 60 Minutes Australia. So I was alerted to the fact that I think as a result of all of the current public interest in the topic of UAP and non-human intelligence, 60 Minutes Australia recently put out an anthology, a compilation of all of the episodes that it's done over the last several decades on extraterrestrial life, non-human intelligence, really asking the question, are we alone in the universe? Now, I'm not going to play any clips from 60 Minutes compilation because I don't want to hit with a copyright strike, which I suspect I would be, but the link is in the show notes below. I found it interesting because one of the episodes they did was in 1982, and it was an interview that I want to say Jana Vent, who used to be for Current Affair on Channel 9. This is going back years. Jana Vent, who is a stellar reporter, stellar journalist, she interviewed Travis Walton. What's that? Only in the years after his experience. And I also enjoyed the 1994 interview that they did with John Mack, who sadly passed away in 2004. So if you want to have a look at what 60 Minutes Australia has put out there over the decades past, unfortunately, they haven't really done anything all that recently. With everything that's going on in the US at the moment, with congressional hearings, with these claims of there being crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs, 60 Minutes Australia really haven't done anything on the topic. We know 60 Minutes in the US has a couple of years ago, but unfortunately 60 Minutes Australia has not touched the topic. So if you want to check it out, feel free to have a look at it. I found it quite interesting. It also talks about exploration of Mars. It goes into the ridiculous stuff about the moon, the moon landing being faked, and they've got Bart Sebrell on there, who I think is a bit of a clown. But if you're interested to have a look at it, you can. This is what I really wanted to talk about, though. The Newcastle Herald, only a few weeks ago, put out an article titled New Lambton UFO Experiencer Calls for Australia to Release Files on UFOs. And unfortunately, this article is, wouldn't you know it, behind a paywall. So I wasn't able to read it. This is the title, New Lambton UFO Experience Calls for Australia to Release Files Like Trump. Now, unfortunately, it's behind a paywall. But fear not. A gentleman on X was kind enough to share with me the article in its entirety, and I'm going to read through it with you now because I think it offers some information that's of interest to all of us. So this is the article. I'll put my little banner up because this is covered under fair use. So this is from the Newcastle Herald on the 9th of March. Must have been released the day prior in the online version. UFO experiencer wants files released. Reported by Damon Cronshaw. So it reads, Dean Gardner will never forget the night he saw a massive black triangled UFO above his New Lambton Heights house in 1999. There was no clouds in the sky. It was a massive ship. It seemed to float on air, said Mr. Garner, who owns a Vern's Guitar Clinic at Wallsend. We were standing directly underneath it. As we were looking at it coming towards us, we could see the lights on the craft. Afterwards, when I touched metal, I get an electric shock. US President Donald Trump has directed government agencies to release files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena UAP, and unidentified flying objects. Let me scroll on up here. Mr. Garner believes the Australian government should absolutely follow suit. Moira McGee, author of the Gosford Files, was skeptical about Trump's announcement. Look at Epstein. Trump promised the release of those files. Out of 6 million files, only 3 million were released, and they were heavily redacted, Mrs. McGee said. Mrs. McGee, a field investigator of the Mutual UFO Network New South Wales, said the Royal Australian Air Force may not officially investigate UFOs. Certainly, they would unofficially behind the scenes. Let me make sure this is still playing. Here we go. The Herald asked former Defence Minister Joel Fitzgibbon if the UAP UFO issue had ever come up in his time as Defence Minister. Quote, I don't recall UFOs or UAPs ever being raised during my time as Defence Minister and member of the National Security Committee, said Mr. Fitzgibbon, the former Hunter MP. So in the region of this, the viewership, where the primary viewership of this newspaper is based, the Hunter region covers Newcastle and so on. A Department of Defence spokesman, so a gentleman, said Defence does not have a protocol for reporting or recording of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, or unidentified flying objects, UFO. Now, that's been their line for years now. Whenever defence media has been asked a question about UAP, UFOs, that's their mantra. That's the line they always come back with, which is incredibly frustrating. They'll never really answer the question that's been asked. Any further questions should be directed to the US government, the spokesman said. Mr. Garner said the triangular craft he saw appeared to be made of a substance that he likened to black glass or titanium. Large and silent flying black triangles have been sighted many times around the world, including during the Belgium UFO wave in 1989-1990. When he saw a depiction of a black triangle UFO seen in Belgium, pictured in the image above, which we'll come back to, Mr. Garner said, that's exactly what I saw. Some people believe these craft are secret government technology, but Mr. Garner believes what he saw was otherworldly. And that's the image he was referencing there. We're in the second column here. We knew straight away it was an alien craft from another world. There was no doubt about it, he said. He said the UFO had 5 lights, including a massive orange light in its center. We were screaming and jumping as it approached our backyard, he said. Mr. Garner was living on Grandview Road at New Lambton Heights on top of a ridge when he saw the craft. That night, he was having a barbecue. About 11 p.m., he was outside talking to a mate about the forthcoming new year. The experience we had that night was simply incredible, he said. Jeff and Marie Masters of Edgeworth also saw the craft, so corroborating witnesses. That's interesting. We were seeing off some visitors when a huge black triangle seemed to float from north to south, very low, Mr. Masters told the Herald in 2017. He said it was very similar to the Phoenix Lights that were filmed in the USA. Mrs. Masters added, it wasn't something from our world. It didn't frighten me, but it did make you realize we're not the only people in the universe. The Hunter and Central Coast have long been hotspots for UFO activity. In 2012, the National Archives of Australia released UFO files, including an incident involving Williamstown RAAF base. The paper stamp restricted told how Operation Close Encounter was launched at Williamstown on June 30, 1983. And I'm sure Bill knows all about this. This followed UFOs being seen on radar screens at Mascot. Senior air controllers reported that the UFOs were traveling at speeds of between 11,000 kilometers per hour and 6,500. 1,100 kilometers per hour and 6,500 kilometers per hour at high altitude, about 70 to 150 nautical miles north of Sydney. A pair of Mirage jets were scrambled to intercept the UFOs. A defense statement later blamed the contacts on random atmospheric conditions. And I believe that the first Senate estimates hearing that the then Chief of Air Force, Air Marshal Mel Hupfield, when he was asked by Senator Peter Wilson about UAP, following on from what had been released in the US from the ODNI's preliminary assessment on UAP, Mel Hupfield talked about Mirage aircraft being scrambled, but it actually, according to him, turned out to be errors on the radar, artifacts or radar errors. In 2023, photos were posted online showing a silver disc-shaped object in the sky above two jets off the coast of Soldiers Beach on the Central Coast. In 1955, eyewitness George Bunn saw a flying saucer land in Lambton Park near the Rotunda. The following day, a burnt circle about 80 meters in diameter was found in the park. I'm going to read from here because my eyes can't read on the screen. Lambton's Phil Mahoney, an 8-year-old boy at the time, said, "We all went down there the next day and saw a burnt, scorched circle in the ground. The grass didn't grow back for about 18 months, Mr. Mahoney said. While recounting the event, Mr. Mahoney said, "I think the UFO files should be released. I don't know why they don't release them." His meaning, I think it would be great. So there you go. That was that's a new article that came out only recently in, again, the Newcastle Herald. I thought it was an interesting one to share with you all. And why I find it particularly interesting is because in the days following the announcement from President Trump that he was going to be, making it a directive that files be released on ET, UFOs, UAP, I reached out to our good friend Richard Marles, and I sent an email. And do you think I got a reply? Of course I didn't, but I sent it nonetheless on the 20th of February, asking, "Dear the Honourable Richard Marles, MP, I hope this email finds you well. As an Australian taxpayer and concerned citizen, I thought I'd take this opportunity to write to you on the topic of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, following US President Donald J. Trump's comments today. In a Truth Social post today, President Trump stated the following: based on the tremendous interest shown, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and any and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters." The White House also reiterated President Trump's comments in an official post on social media platform X. And then I posted what it was below with a link to it. And so then I asked some questions. Given Australia's close ties with the United States and the Australian Department of Defence's previous history investigating reports of unusual aerial sightings, UAS, up until 1996, courtesy of the Royal Australian Air Force, I kindly request your response to the following questions. What is the Australian Department of Defence's response to President Trump's announcement? Number two, given President Trump's directive to the US Department of War, does the Australian Department of Defense have plans to follow the United States lead and release records related to alien, extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, and unidentified flying objects, and any and all other information? On consideration of President Trump's announcement and directive, will the Australian Department of Defence commit to a formal review of its current position on unidentified anomalous phenomena? And four, does the US President's announcement and directive cause concern for the Australian public and the brave men and women of the Australian Defence Force, given the Australian Department of Defence current given the Australian Department of Defence's current lack of public engagement on the topic of UAP and its current lack of specific recording and reporting protocols pertaining to observations of UAP. Your timely response to the above questions we greatly appreciated. And of course, I got absolutely no response. So, which is disappointing to say the least. But nonetheless, I had to go and wanted to try. So that was an interesting article that I thought I would share with you. If you are a subscriber of the Newcastle Herald, you can read the article behind the paywall. But let's now use that as an opportunity to talk about my good friend, or I wish he was my good friend, Kurt Russell, because he is back in the news as of late. So Kurt Russell, my favorite all-time actor and experiencer, he observed the Phoenix Lights with his son, Oliver Hudson, on the 13th of March, 1997. He was recently on the Jonathan Ross show and was asked about his encounter with the Phoenix Lights. Now, Kurt has only talked about his encounter with the Phoenix Lights, I believe, on 4 occasions now. The first time was in 2017 on the BBC's The One Show. And then I think the year after in 2018 with Jimmy Kimmel. And then in a recent interview with his son, Wyatt Russell, also on the with Jimmy Kimmel only a couple of years ago. And interesting enough, Kurt had his encounter with the Phoenix Lights. Goldie Hawn has had her own experience with the phenomenon. And Wyatt Russell, Kurt's son, has also seen a UFO. So I don't know if there is something runs in the family, but they've all had an experience seeing something that they weren't able to readily explain or understand or reconcile. So let me play for you this clip of Kurt talking about, actually, before I show you the clip, for those of you that are oblivious to what the Phoenix Lights is, let me play for you this very brief montage of clips of news reports that came out in the days after the Phoenix Lights incident of the 13th of March of 1997. So you can get a sense as to what transpired, or what was reported at least, in the skies above Phoenix.
p.m., hundreds, maybe thousands of Arizonans reported seeing a triangular-shaped object with 3 distinct lights streaking across the sky at incredible speed.
So, what are these mysterious flying machines?
We do know that something strange did happen in the sky over Arizona last night.
But it is very rare for thousands of people to call and report seeing the same lights in the same spot at the same time.
UFO watchers are calling it a dramatic event.
And folks who witnessed this strange sighting are calling it simply unexplainable.
The first sighting last night came in from Paulden, then Prescott, and then Phoenix, where the objects turned white. The white objects were later seen over Tucson, and the last sightings were from northwest Arizona around Kingman. Some witnesses described the fleet of lights as a V-shaped formation. Some say they were in a line. Others saw a diamond shape, and still others saw a star.
This series of strange lights, which appeared in the northern Arizona sky last night, has thousands of people scratching their heads.
And the number of lights seen ranges from 1 to 9. I'm told that at least one traffic controller saw the lights, but John and Marlene, nothing showed up on radar.
Nothing showed up on radar.
Nothing.
I'm going to say it sounded like some type of military aircraft, but if it doesn't show up on radar, now you've got me wondering.
The military says the lights over Arizona last night were flares.
2 bright lights that turned into 3 bright lights that turned into 4 bright lights. It's something UFO enthusiasts are calling a major sighting. Explanations have been tossed about that they were flares, that they were planes flying in formation. But Mark and Robin, we checked with the FAA today, we checked with Sky Harbor, and we checked with Luke Air Force Base, and there's been no official explanation.
At least one pilot radioed to the Sky Harbor Tower that the lights passed directly over his aircraft, but the tower saw no sign of anything on radar.
I issued a call for an investigation by the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and now I'll ask Officer Stein and his colleagues to escort the accused into the room so that we may all look upon the guilty party. Don't get him too close to me, please. This just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
So disgraceful there by Fife Symington at the end there, the governor, I think, at the time. And he did a 180 backflip and then came out and said, no, I was a witness to the Phoenix Lights, a massive craft. But that kind of just gives you a snapshot of what the Phoenix Lights was all about, based on the reporting in the media at the time. So let me play for you now the interview of Kurt Russell only recently, a couple of weeks ago, on the Jonathan Ross show, talking about his encounter with the Phoenix Lights.
Kurt, who is a pilot, not so much anymore, I know, but you were a pilot for many years.
So there you go. So Kurt talking about it. Now, interesting that he kind of didn't note it in his logbook. He didn't think about it for 6 years, didn't talk about it with Oliver. But what is interesting in that interview, and you have to listen carefully to hear it, he said the words Bonanza 2 Tango Sierra. And for any of you that are a fan of the Unexplained Rundown, you'll know that one of my first videos that I did was actually on Kurt Russell and the Phoenix Lights. And I did a ton of research on the Phoenix Lights and what I could track down on Kurt's encounter, because that one bit of information, Bonanza 2 Tango Sierra, well, many of you will be wondering what that references. That actually references the tail sign of the aircraft, the light aircraft that Kurt Russell was flying that night to Phoenix. And through hours and hours of research, I was able to track down the owner of the plane that Kurt Russell flew to Phoenix Sky Harbor International on the evening of the 13th of March, 1997. Now, I'm kind of spoiling it for those of you that haven't seen this kind of documentary video that I did. Feel free to watch it in its entirety if you wish. But this is an interview that I tracked down a gentleman by the name of John Rexy Moore, who is a good friend of Kurt Russell's, or was at the time, and is a fellow actor. He actually starred in a film with Kurt Russell in 1996 called Executive Decision. And I'll play for you this clip now because it kind of pulls it full circle and gives you some new information, which I revealed at the time, pertaining to the aircraft that Kurt flew on the evening of the 13th of March, 1997. One of the things that's obviously truly fascinating for folks like myself, and for those that I'm not a pilot, but Bonanza, this is a Beechcraft Bonanza aircraft, and the tail sign is all tail signs start with an N, General Aviation 2 Tango Sierra. So Bonanza being the type of aircraft, 2 Tango Sierra. And so I was able to track down this gentleman, John Rexy Moore, and have a discussion with him about his aircraft being flown by Kurt Russell and passenger Oliver Hudson to Phoenix, in which they observed the Phoenix Lights. That follow this topic. Now, as the world knows, it was during an interview on the BBC's The One program in 2017 that Kurt revealed when he was promoting Guardians of the Galaxy 2 that it was he that was the general aviation pilot that observed those 6 lights, above Phoenix, the Sky Harbor International Airport, on approach with his son Oliver, who I think he was flying to Phoenix so he could visit his girlfriend. And the world was then made aware that it was actually Kurt Russell that was the pilot that witnessed and reported the Phoenix Lights to air traffic control. And what I found to be even more fascinating is that during that interview on the BBC The One's program, he quoted the call sign of Bonanza 2 Tango Sierra, which I remembered I had heard from watching Executive Decision so many times over the years, because Kurt actually quotes 2 Tango Sierra in this scene. And so I was able to kind of correlate that, hang on a second, this is the plane that Kurt Russell flew to Phoenix and witnessed and reported the Phoenix Lights. That was, to me, truly, truly fascinating. So how was it that you came to be aware of the fact that it was Kurt Russell that witnessed the Phoenix Lights and probably more amazingly, it was in your bonanza that it happened.
I found out about it the way you did, watching the program. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But that's my beloved old bonanza. I flew it across the United States multiple times, 20 plus times. Lovely little airplane. I'd love to get another one.
I bet you were sad to see it go as well.
Yeah, I was, especially because the guy that bought it was a jerk.
Oh, well, that's never. You always want one love to fall into good hands and be looked after when you part ways. So I'm sorry to hear that it maybe went to someone that wasn't as deserving of it as they should have been.
That's what I think. You can get a relationship going. You can have affection for machinery, for things.
So, and you can see just from this scene in Executive Decision. So this is inside your plane, the same plane that Kurt flew to Phoenix and witnessed. And I'll just say for the audience, that's Kurt Russell on the left, and that's John Rexy Moore on the right. So they acted together in this scene in Executive Decision, and this is in John Rexy Moore's aircraft. So this is the perspective that Kurt and his son Oliver. That's what it would have been looking through from this perspective on their flight to Phoenix. The Phoenix Lights with his son Oliver. So this is the field of view that for folks that have not been in a small single engine prop plane before. This is the field of view. This is what Kurt and Oliver would have been looking, from their point of view at the Phoenix Lights. I mean, what have you ever flown into Sky Harbor yourself?
Yeah, I have. Mm-hmm.
And the approach that you would take, I imagine, coming from Los Angeles would be kind of that north to south. So do you recall anything about the landscape as you're flying into Phoenix?
Well, it's surrounded by mountains and old extinct volcanoes. I landed there once very early in the morning. The sun was just up and the air was quite chilly. And I was surprised to see that some of the volcanoes, some of the old cinder cones were smoking. Mm-hmm. And it made me realize that the magma that has long since receded from those little puckers in the ground is still warming those things enough to create steam in certain conditions. And the other time I went in to Phoenix, it was after dark, and when I left, it was after dark. So you just have to make sure you climb as fast as they tell you to avoid the mountaintops.
Right. Yeah, because I imagine they can creep up on you pretty quick if
you know you're coming.
Yeah, exactly right. And what did Kurt ever share with you details of his account in your bonanza, or is that something that you would love to have a conversation with him on if you have a chance to?
I'd love to talk to him about the Phoenix encounter. As I said, I didn't know he was up in it that night or that he was in Phoenix until I saw that interview too.
Right. And what question would we have for him, or what would be one of the questions you would have for him if you had the opportunity to ask?
Oh, I'd ask him what it was like to be closer to it than the people on the ground. Was he above it? Was he underneath it? That wasn't clear in the interview. Not to me. I think that is one of the most fascinating UFO encounters.
So there you go. That was an interview I did with John Rexy Moore. Separate interview, factored him into that documentary video that I did on Kurt Russell and the Phoenix Lights. So if you're interested to watch it, feel free to check it out. It's obviously on the channel. But just some interesting context there about Kurt's encounter with the Phoenix Lights. Again, really didn't know much about the aircraft that he flew with Oliver, his son, to Phoenix. So again, just some interesting information to share with you all on there. So we don't know which event Kurt Russell witnessed, because the Phoenix Lights was actually two separate incidents. There was a sighting at approximately 8:30 p.m. and then there was the mass sighting at 10 p.m. And it's really never been clear as to what it was that Kurt and Oliver were privy to. So I speculated in that video documentary that I did as to what it was that they may have seen. So I put together, based on information that John Rexy Moore had shared to me on his aircraft, the cruising speed, altitude, where it was housed, Santa Monica Airport. I speculated as to, well, what could have Kurt Russell seen with his son Oliver on the 13th of March, 1997. And this is just a quick clip from the documentary video I did, Kurt Russell and the Phoenix Lights. So if it's of interest, feel free to continue watching. This crude animation, let's track Kurt and Oliver's journey in John Rexy Moore's plane N2TS following their departure at Santa Monica Airport with a flight time of up to 2.5 hours to Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, based on Kurt's account and the fact that he indicated he saw lights, which would be clearly identifiable after sunset, we can safely speculate that Kurt and Oliver arrived at Sky Harbor at night. Now, let's zoom out a little and take a wider view of what may have transpired that evening. And for frame of reference, allow me to point out some key landmarks. Here we have Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, South Mountain, the Estrella Mountains, Paradise Valley, where Dr. Lynn Kitai filmed the Phoenix Lights with a video camera, and of course we have Luke Air Force Base. So, what happened at 8:30 p.m. on Thursday the 13th of March, 1997? A V-shaped craft was reported to have flown southbound from northern Arizona towards or over Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport and then onwards to Tucson. At approximately 10 p.m. that evening, upwards of 9 glowing lights were seen appearing in the direction of the Estrella Mountains and disappearing shortly thereafter. Let's just change the view here to reflect what most folks are familiar with in terms of a vantage point. Now, if the reports are to be believed from the US Air Force that slow-falling, long-burning illumination flares were dropped by a flight of 4 A-10 Warhog aircraft from the Maryland Air National Guard operating over the North Tactical Range, or NTAC, NTAC for short, of the Barry M. Goldwater Air Force Range, which is west of Gila Bend, then the lights would have indeed appeared to have winked out as they fell behind the Estrella Mountain Range to the southwest of Phoenix. Now, the issue with this second event as it pertains to Kurt Russell is that the NTAC, the NTAC, is some 50 to 60 miles west of Phoenix, absolutely nowhere near Sky Harbor Airport, where Kurt indicated the 6 lights were above. That would place the lights observed at 10 p.m. way behind the Estrella Mountains and west of Gila Bend, consistent with the US Air Force's story of flares being dropped at the back end of a training exercise. And it's of interest to note that illumination flares can reportedly be observed up to 100 miles away. So Kurt and Oliver had to have witnessed the 8:30 p.m. event, the 6 lights in a V formation over Sky Harbor Airport, and not the lights witnessed on a massive scale at 10 p.m. in the direction of the Estrella Mountains, which was captured in almost all of the video footage that is publicly available. I can therefore only rack my brain with absolute intrigue and fascination as to what Kurt and Oliver actually saw on the evening of the 13th of March 1997. One can only imagine.
Clear to land, 2 Tango Sierra.
What the... So there you go. So that just gives you a little bit of interesting information. Now, there's a slight discrepancy between what Kurt said in his interview with Jimmy Kimmel in 2018 and what you just saw in that interview on the Jonathan Ross show. In his interview with Jimmy Kimmel, he said he saw 6 lights in a V formation. And in that Jonathan Ross interview, he didn't say 5 or 6, but when he said lead light, two back, that would indicated that there was 5. So, was it 5 lights or 6 lights? Why is that interesting? Well, that's where we're kind of going next, because now I don't know what it was that Kurt saw, but there have certainly been put forward some plausible explanations. Now, I'm pretty confident that, the 10 p.m. sighting, which was the mass sighting that thousands and thousands of people saw, were actually illumination flares that kind of drifted below the Australia Mountains. And I'll tell you why I think that in just a moment. Now, the 8:30 event has always been one that intrigued me, that V-shape formation of those 5 or 6 lights going back that were reported over Sky Harbor International Airport. Well, a couple of years ago, there was an article in the Phoenix New Times. Phoenix Lights explained everything to know about the legendary UFO sighting. And I won't read the full article, but basically it talks about, how many people saw the Phoenix Lights? Why did so many people see it? It talks about, did any celebrities see it? And obviously goes into Kurt Russell's account, which we know about. And basically it then puts forward some of the explanations. What are some of the explanations for the Phoenix Lights? Well, the explanation accepted by most skeptics is that the Phoenix Lights were caused by military activity in Arizona during the night of the incidents. The first sighting, the one at 8:30, 8:30, is to believe to have been a group of A-10 Thunderbolt jets flying in a V-shaped formation as part of Operation Snowboard, a pilot training program operating out of Davis Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson by the Air National Guard. The story is backed up by the account of Mitch Stanley, a 21-year-old amateur astronomer living in Scottsdale at the time. Now, I don't know how far Scottsdale is from Phoenix at the time, who told New Times in 1997 he used a 10-inch Dobsonian mirrored telescope to view a squadron of fighter planes. Now, I don't know what time it was that he saw that through the telescope. That may be documented elsewhere in other reports, but it's not in this article. So good pal and good researcher on X. I'll just pull up his profile. Chris Fowler responded to, I put out a post basically sharing that clip that I just played for you with John Rexy Moore. And Chris posted that, well, what Kurt most likely saw was those planes, those snowboard planes in formation. And he posted some information pertaining to the snowbirds, formation flights. They had scheduled flights all throughout the year of 1997. And I'll talk about, and this is basically a drawing that Mitch Stanley made. I don't know how long after the Phoenix Lights event, but he kind of made this drawing of what it is that he saw through his telescope. Now, there's no photographic evidence of what he saw through his telescope. It's just his recollection. And Chris also referenced these 5 lights in a V formation. And so what we can consider is that if we have a look at the 10 p.m. incident, let's start with the 8:30 p.m. incident. This is a video that was taken by witness Terry Proctor. This is the only video evidence that shows that V formation of 5 lights, consistent with what it is that Kurt was describing he saw. So let me play this for you. I'll do it in max view so we can see it. Oops.
Gail, the hell with it. Come here. You see it? Yeah. I don't know what it is yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to hand hold this bastard.
That's what he's calling about.
What?
This. He said something about a V formation.
Hurry up.
He's.
You watch it, honey.
So, short and sweet, that is the only video evidence of a V formation of 5 lights being observed on the 13th of March, 1997. Now, is it possible that what Kurt saw was that formation of those aircraft, those snowbirds? It's possible. I don't know. That's certainly a question that if I had the opportunity to ask Kurt, I would certainly love to. So I certainly think that what Chris has suggested there, and with what Mitch Stanley saw, that 21-year-old amateur astronomer through his telescope, it's certainly a hypothesis that should not be ignored. Now, as for the 10 p.m. sighting, well, I think it's safe to say that that has been debunked as illumination flares, because what someone did a number of years ago is they took the footage that we've all seen of the Phoenix Lights incidents, those 6 lights kind of winking out, and they were able to track down the location of where that video footage was taken from. They were able to take footage of the terrain during the daytime and then superimpose the nighttime footage taken from approximately the same location and see what happens to those lights when taken at nighttime, when it's superimposed over the daytime footage. So I find this to be pretty compelling, and it kind of just shows you that the lights do seem to wink out as they drop behind the Australia Mountains. So that would be consistent with illumination flares, falling to the ground after they've been dropped. So I find that pretty compelling to suggest that the 10 p.m. incident was nothing more than illumination flares that were misidentified, and that's the most commonly reviewed and publicized footage of the Phoenix Lights. Those 6 or 7, you can see there is on the range there is there's 5 lights and there's a light here across to the left, and they all happen to just wink out when they pass when they're obstructed by the view of the Australia Mountains. So again, that's just my thoughts. Others may have a different opinion, but I find that to be relatively compelling and interesting. So just wanted to share. I'm a big fan of Kurt Russell, obviously, so wanted to be able to share that with you all. As we kind of wrap things up at the back end, I just want to give a quick shout out to UAP Gerb. He was kind enough to give me a shout out on one of his recent videos. He was doing a Q&A live stream following his attendance at the where was it? It was in Canada, an event that he attended with Chris Ramsey, Jesse Michaels, and Luigi and Bob Lazar turned up unannounced and unexpectedly for the folks that were in attendance. So let me show you this brief clip from UAP Gerb's channel. And UAP Gerb, I have to pay him a lot of credit. He does a ton of research. He's the man of acronyms. If you haven't checked out his content, do check it out. He does some wonderful research. And I need a dictionary every time I watch what he talks about, but it is interesting nonetheless. This was a clip that UAP Gerb was talking about with some of his colleagues about, interestingly, FOIA in Australia. So being a channel that focuses on Australian-centric content, I have found this to be quite interesting, so I thought I would share it with you all.
In Australia, be useful. I'm a bit of a doomer, pessimistic on FOIA in general. I think Rob said this once. FOIA is an appeasement process. Am I quoting you correctly, Rob?
Yeah. FOIA, for the most part, is an appeasement process for allowing the public to see certain things. And when you do get good things through FOIA, it's usually because somebody fucked up.
That's
just
true.
to put that out there. Sorry for the language, but I'm not the biggest fan of FOIA. I also believe that FOIA, in a certain sense, can also bring a target down on something you're trying to find out about. It's sort of like calling your shot, like, hey, I'm investigating this. Would you please tell me more, please? And they can be like, oh, you're investigating this? Nothing to see here. Move along. And then they move all the assets. You know what I mean? So like a lot of times when I'm really like trying to drill down on something, I'm not sure that I want to place a FOIA request in for certain aspects of certain programs. Certain people don't need to be alerted that people are looking into that.
Yeah.
But like with regards to Australian FOIA, that's probably a better question for somebody like Ross or like Reese or somebody else.
Grant Lavac,
you know what I mean?
as well. I know he's an active
Grant would
Australian
be a good guy
researcher.
to talk to too.
Yeah.
So, appreciated the shout out from UAP Gerb there. That was nice to see them recognize that I've been doing some work on FOIA. But I think FOIA is never ever going to be and never has been the be all end all. But I am of the opinion that it can reveal some interesting breadcrumbs that can lead to other breadcrumbs and can provide information on, for example, AARO's inaugural Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group meeting that we didn't know about until I received a FOIA response back. And that opened up a whole conversation about, well, how engaged are the Five Eyes on the topic of UAP and engage in discussions with the US. And we kind of opened up a can of worms with that FOIA request. So I certainly think you can get some interesting information and breadcrumbs from FOIA. Do I think you'll ever get disclosure from FOIA? Absolutely not. You'll never get anything that is going to reveal and be all the end all, but you can get some interesting information nonetheless. So again, kudos to UAP Gerb there. Do check out his channel. There's some very, very interesting content that he does put out. So check it out if you wish. That kind of brings us towards the back end. I just want to plant the seed on a few things that are ahead. It was released only today, a brand new trailer, or yesterday, within the last 24 hours, the brand new film S4, The Bob Lazar Story, which is scheduled to be released on Amazon Prime worldwide on the 3rd of April. So it's only a couple of weeks away. I've put a link to the trailer in the show notes below. So if you want to check it out, do. I won't show it here because I don't want to be hit with a copyright strike. But I have to tell you what, even though I'm pretty agnostic on the Bob Lazar case, Bob Lazar story, visually, the production value and visually, this documentary looks absolutely stunning. I think Luigi and the team have done a wonderful job using I believe it's Unreal Engine to recreate S4, to recreate a young Bob Lazar, and really give us a visual frame of reference as to, we've only ever heard from Bob Lazar's mouth. We've always had to kind of paint the picture in our minds. Well, now you've got this wonderful documentary that includes narration and on-screen interviews with Bob Lazar, but also has some now accompanying visuals that support, or I should say, serve as a great companion piece to Bob Lazar's commentary over all the years past. So from a production value standpoint, I can't wait to check it out. I think it's going to be really interesting. Just someone that's interested in the claims that Bob Lazar has put out there. Again, I'm agnostic on Bob. I think there are a few holes in his on the education piece that have never been fully addressed or answered. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to seeing the documentary that comes out in a couple of weeks. Last thing I wanted to leave you with on the announcement front, I will be returning to the Australian UFO Festival in Cardwell later this year, 6th to the 9th of August. They've actually extended it by, I think, a day. It used to be a 3-day event. Now it's a 4-day event. I'm planning on doing a presentation on all things Westall. The working title is Westall 60 Years of Secrecy. So I'm going to be compiling a lot of the documents that I have well, not documents I've been able to secure for release, but FOIA responses that I've received over the years, and where my interviews with some of the primary witnesses have taken me to exploring other lines of inquiry and FOIA requests, and obviously the Westall petition. So packaging pretty much everything I've done with respect to my Westall research over the last couple of years, and putting it in a 1-hour presentation at Cardwell for this year's Australian UFO Festival. If you're interested to get along, it is unfortunately a bit of a trek to get up to Cardwell. You've got to fly to Cairns or Townsville, and then it's a couple hours of drive to get down to Cardwell. But if you're interested to check it out, I've added a link to the Australian UFO Festival website in the show notes below. They have what's called the C files instead of the X files, the C files for Cardwell Forum, where you have a lot of great speakers. Bill Chalker last year did a presentation remotely, as did Ross, Peter Curie. You had Anthony Goodall from Close Encounters Down Under. You had Triffin from Unlocking the Code. You had Lee Phillips. You had Roger Stankovic did a presentation in person as well. So had some really, really great speakers last year, and I'm looking forward to getting up there because I enjoyed it last year, and I had an opportunity to meet some really good people. I had an opportunity to inspect the Tully Saucer Nest site, which was not something I'd planned, but just happened to occur very randomly and to my surprise and delight. So I'm looking forward to getting up there again. I know that there are one or two others that have mentioned they might be getting up there. So if you do get up there, I look forward to seeing you there. But for now, I've got to get off and start working on my presentation. So that's everything that I wanted to walk you through this evening, folks. As always, I hope this has been interesting and of value. I always like to come to these live streams with something tangible that you can have a look at yourself, rather than just speak into my microphone about anything and everything. So as always, hope you've enjoyed this episode. Before we wrap up, do want to obviously share your comments, because I do appreciate you taking the time to opine, of course. So let us go back and have a look at some of the comments that were made. I might just come down where we'll go back to, might take it back. Let's see where we can start from. Short order cook one. I missed the 60-minute show. Yeah, feel free to go back and have a look at it if you wish. The anthology compilation of all of their episodes over the years. The perfume steamroller, Yana Vent. Yeah, she was great. She was certainly my years growing up watching Current Affair. Erin saw the anthology. A lot of good stuff in there. Again, nothing that's overly recent, but was interesting nonetheless. Let's have a look at Bill commented, cut and paste to my OzFile site for info and perspective on 1983's Operation Close Encounters. Yeah, I'd be keen to have a look at that, Bill. I don't think I've I'll put it in the show notes if you want to drop me a text with the link, and I'll add it in there. Aaron, I completely agree. When it comes to the UAP topic, the Australian federal government is sadly a joke. It really just doesn't want to touch it, which is publicly anyway. I think privately behind closed doors, it's quite a different story. Aussie Ange, not waiting for any government department to disclose anything. I agree with you. Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn are legends. I'm a big fan. I've actually got Goldie's book. She goes into her biography. She goes into her encounter. She had a real experience with the phenomenon she talks about in her book. I wonder if I should probably do a show on it at some point if I have time to research it. Shorter Cook, at the Berkshire UFO incident, over 200 people saw it, and there were 3 recorded abductions. I don't remember any abductions from the Phoenix Lights incident. I'm not aware of any myself there, Bex, because it was just flares. Let's say, Aussie Ange, it's so sad that they do this to people when it's a joke. when it's so real, no wonder people don't come forward. Yeah, the stigma and ridicule is unfortunately still very much alive and well, and certainly alive and well in the Australian government and Department of Defence. Yeah, it certainly came across in that Jonathan Ross interview that Kurt experienced either missing time or it has been mentioned before that some folks just forget about the incident, and then for whatever reason, it comes back to them in some weird way down the road. So, Polly, great to see you. Hope all is well. I know that you're in a bit of a tough spot over there in Israel at the moment, so I hope you and your family and friends are keeping safe. Always good to see you. Jimmy asked Bill, have you thought about an updated version of your book, Hair of the Alien? And goes on to say, the hair samples, is it still able to be tested with new technology without destroying the sample? Interesting. Let's see if Bill had an opportunity to respond. Shorter to Cook had to get off a couple a whiles back, but thank you for tuning in, and certainly looking forward to reporting back on the upcoming Westall events. Again, should be certainly interesting to get down there for it. Bill's response to Jimmy there, the balance of the hair sample is in Peter Curie's control. The root part was exhausted, but the balance might give support to shaft analysis, but doubtful regarding the root. I believe Peter Curie is actually doing a public speaking engagement in July in Sydney. I've got that somewhere in my X. I'll just pull that up really quickly, and I might post it on X. But Peter Curie is doing a talk and meetup on the 4th of July, so it's a bit of a ways away, at Club Burwood at 1 p.m. So Saturday, the 4th of July, 1 p.m. Club Burwood. I'll actually, you know what? I've just reposted that on X. So anyone that follows me on X, you can have a look at it. Raf, thank you for tuning in, my friend from X. Appreciate you tuning in. And I think that's pretty much all the comments, folks. So Jimmy, always appreciate you tuning in, buddy. I know that you work pretty late into the wee hours of the morning. So thanks for from taking some time out of your evening. Bex, appreciate you, my friend. Look forward to seeing you at the upcoming event. Hopefully you can get that ride. Jojo, thanks for tuning in. And Zane, always good to see you, my friend. Thanks for tuning in. So that's it, folks, from me. We're under the 3-hour mark yet again, so I'm crushing it on breaking the 3 hours. Really, really appreciate you all tuning in, spending your evening with me, engaging, asking questions, having conversations with each other. That's what it's all about. You're having open discussions where we can agree to disagree at times, but do it in a way that is respectful. And we, at the end of the day, we all want answers on what is all going on with this phenomenon. So thank you for your time. For those of you attending the Westall events next month, I look forward to seeing you there. Bill, Jimmy, I look forward to seeing you guys there, Bex and George and a few others. So once again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unexplained Rundown, and I look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode. So thanks again, and enjoy your upcoming weekend. Bye.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing with your friends, family, colleagues, and social network, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to be notified whenever the Unexplained Rundown goes live, premieres, or posts a new video, be sure to ring that cowbell.